On your Monday episode of Locked On Raptors, Toronto falls to the Dallas Mavericks on Saturday, but it sure feels like Scottie Barnes is making the leap.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, December the 9th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. We cover the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky, as well as on Instagram with the show. You can just search up Locked On Raptors. We're on Discord as well. You can join the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Great little listener community we got building around the show. Link in the description of the podcast. It's free to join, and it's also free to subscribe to the daily Locked On Raptors newsletter. Original writing from me 5 days a week. You can find it at the QR code on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Just put your camera right in front of that. Go right on through, put your email in, and get it to your inbox every single day for free. You can also go and find it at the link in the description of the podcast. You can just go click through there, put your email in, and get it to your inbox every single day, okay? It's free. There's no reason not to do it. So please do it, please. It makes me feel so good. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we'll get started here on your Monday edition of the show talking about a Toronto Raptors 125-118 classic fake comeback, a loss to the Dallas Mavericks. A fake comeback you can feel good about, I'd say. That it was not the greatest of first halves. We'll get into the monstrosity that is trying to guard Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving and the struggles the Raptors had with that. But all told, I think a loss, you feel all right coming away from. Big V, Vivek Jacob from Sportsnet and Raptors in 7 is here. We're going to get into RJ Barrett not playing down the stretch for a long minute as the Raptors were coming back. That's interesting. We've got the good, the bad, and the I got some Scottie Barnes thoughts as he's now winning minutes, which is great. Big V, impressions of the Raptors' loss to the Mavericks over the weekend.
Yeah, I think even in the first half, I was just like, okay, this looks like one of those nights where you just tip your hat. Luka and Kyrie are just being Luka and Kyrie, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And from that standpoint, it was really encouraging the way pretty much the last couple minutes of the third and then the rest of the way they just battled back. And, there was that fun lineup with Scottie and Jacoby and Mobo. And Kelly. And so I thought they got some interesting stuff done. And then, once you build that momentum, you're able to work your way back. But just a little too much Luka and Kyrie in the end.
Turns out those guys pretty good. But also, Big V, you know who else is pretty good? Is Scottie Barnes. And that's where I want to start today. As sort of my big takeaway. Yeah, they lost. We're not going to get into the nuts and bolts necessarily of, how and why they lost. Probably. Well, we'll get into it as we go throughout the good, bad, and stuff later on. But when it comes to Scottie Barnes, I think, one of the numbers I threw out, I did a summer podcast where I was sort of talking about the numbers I was most interested to watch. I don't know if you were on that podcast or not, but picked out some stats that I was going to be monitoring throughout the season as sort of the most important telltale signs of whether this season is going to plan or not. And one of those numbers was Scottie Barnes's on-off splits, his point differential between when he's on the floor and when he's off. And more importantly, are they winning the minutes he's playing? This team is not super talented. They're not a contender or anything like that. But the thing that most superstars have in common, Big V, is when they're on the floor, their teams tend to win basketball games, or at least win minutes when they're out there. We've seen this with Nikola Jokic and sort of the extreme this season where they are like the best team that's ever existed when he plays and the worst team that's ever existed when he sits. That is sort of the ultimate extreme far end of the spectrum. Scottie Barnes not far off from that. So far this year, he's got a plus 16 on-off differential. The Raptors are a plus 2.6 net rating when he's on the floor. They're winning minutes when he is on the floor. This is over the last 9 games. Since he returned from injury. He's that plus 16. And they're a minus 13.4 when he sits. It's been a rough scene when he's not on the floor. And this played out in that Mavericks game where he was a plus 10 in the game they lost by 7. And I think his playmaking sort of step has been, we can get into this. I think the jump he's made as a playmaker, while he's only averaging one more assist per game, I think there have been some very real steps taken as far as how he's commanding the offense. The 3-point shots coming around a little bit lately here too. He's at 32% on nearly 7 attempts a game, or more than 7 attempts a game since coming back from injury as well. These last 9 games, Big V, have been the superstar leap, or at least the beginnings of the superstar leap that we were all hoping we'd see from Scottie Barnes. Didn't quite see it in those first few games. That Cavs game really dragged the numbers down. But it feels like he's kind of doing the thing here, Big V. And the thing is, when he's on the floor, the team's actually pretty good.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I kind of look at it in terms of like he was an all-star last year. Can he get to that all NBA leap? And then we'll see him get to that superstar leap.
Sure.
And so I think it's obviously heading in the right direction. I think, you noted the improvement in the passing. I do think these last few games, what's encouraged me is seeing the chemistry with Yak improve. I think, we saw immediately after coming back, maybe it was a bit clunky and they were kind of getting in their way a little bit and whatnot, but I feel like that's really improved the last few games, and Yak's been scoring better too the last few games. So that's a big positive. I do think obviously Gradey Dick's return helps with the geometry of the court and allowing those two to maybe operate a bit better. So I think those are all positives. I think, with all those things in place right now, I think we could see Scottie put up some big assist numbers, at least until Quickley is back, and then maybe we'll see things stabilize a bit. But I do think now with Gradey back, with that chemistry with Yak improving, obviously we've seen the great chemistry with RJ, so I would not be surprised if Scottie puts up some monster assist totals over the coming week or so. And Kelly's back too.
Yeah, Kelly's back too. That's very helpful. Kelly, Mobo, Barnes. I've wanted to see that front court for a long time. We saw a little bit of that in this game, and I was a pig at the trough, having the time of my life eating that up. With Barnes, like, I feel more comfortable with him running the offense than I ever have right now. He feels like it's not like the most like quick developing all the time. There are still hiccups. This was not a perfect game by Scottie Barnes by any means, right? He only scores 19 points. He's 8 of 17. Maybe there were a couple buckets he left on the table. And, that was, we'll get into later, a story for the team in this game. But I just feel like the way he's commanding things, the way he's dictating, what defenses are doing and how he's playing out of that, it's just been so much sharper. The precision of his reads has been a little more on point. And, he's only averaging, like I said, 1 assist more per game. But I feel like the quality of those assists is going up. And he's also kind of getting rid of the thing that used to drive me crazy about Scottie Barnes. And look, we love guys who throw cool passes. It's like the party line of the podcast. But he used to throw cool passes just for the sake of throwing cool passes. And it didn't quite feel like it was additive to the offensive flow or possession. How many times did he sort of throw to Chris Boucher when he's totally not ready for it, just in the interest of throwing a cool dime, but it ends up a turnover. He punches it out of bounds. Like, knowing his teammates, knowing his personnel, knowing where guys want it, like that seems to have taken a step up. And I know his turnovers are at a career high. I could not care less right now. He's trying stuff out, and he also is, just sort of warping the way defenses have to play the Raptors with his passing in a way he never has before. The price of a couple extra turnovers here and there, to me, is totally worth it. It's been really nice to see. And then, the defensive stuff, I mean, you want to talk about like full level stardom. The defense stuff with him has been awesome. He's just blowing stuff up at every turn. The team is 6.3 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor on defense than when he's off. That's been a huge swing that he's brought about since coming back 9 games ago. This 9-game stretch has been really encouraging for all the stuff that you want to see out of Scottie Barnes. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the scoring part of it, because I know there's this sort of idea that superstars got to score 25 a game. That's what they got to do. Like, this is how superstars live. And I get it. It'd be nice if Scottie was averaging, he's averaging 21 a game in these nine games since he came back. 21, 9, and 8, by the way. Holy crap. Just like a walking triple-double threat. It's great. What is your sort of read on the whole, like, Scottie needs to kind of find his own offense a little more easily than he has for him to truly make that leap, from where he is to all NBA to eventually superstar?
Yeah, so I think there is definitely a path to if you build enough scoring on the roster around him,
Mhm.
and enough threats, that I don't think he needs to be like, an absolute like A+ level scorer. Uh, I do think regardless, when you get into facing like a playoff type defense, you want to be able to like consistently knock down the mid range. You want to be able to, keep them honest with the 3-point shot. Because then you see, right? Like playoff defenses will exaggerate your weaknesses. And
Mhm.
so I do think that in terms of the long-term development, when you talk about, all NBA superstar level, I think he can definitely be all NBA level, like almost without those things. But I
Mhm.
think superstar is going to need, um, I think definitely that mid range.
Sure. 51% on short mid-range shots this year, career high.
Yeah.
38% on long mid-rangers. It's not like amazing, but it's in line sort of with his career numbers as well.
Right.
It's coming along. I think for me, like the scoring part with him, it's interesting because like, yeah, I get it. You want your star to be able to go and drop 25, 30 whenever you need it type of thing. But I think to your point, the idea of Scottie Barnes plus a bunch of really good play finishers can have a very similar effect because very few players in the world are sort of gifted with his level of passing vision and the ability to kind of put those play finishers or in good spots to finish. And he draws a ton of attention. Like that's always going to be a thing. He's getting paint touches on a lot of these assists, and it's just like, oh, there's two guys here. Yuck, easy bucket for you. Like it doesn't have to all be the same shape as a Jason Tatum takeover or a LeBron James takeover, where it's like, oh, well, he's got 45. Okay, crazy. Wow. Like he'll have games like that. Surely, I think we're going to start to see those more often. But I do think those will mostly be a function of the supporting cast around him, especially once Quickley gets back, just making those avenues to scoring easier because there's threats all over the place and it makes it harder for the defense to kind of sell out to send a bunch of help Scotty's way. Like superstars all are unique, right? Like Scotty is one of one. All the best players in the world are one of one. And that's why basketball is cool. And I think kind of looking at every star and being like, he's got to do this to be a star. Like, no, like that defies kind of the joy of every player having their own flavor and their own way of sort of getting on that path to superstardom. And again, he probably has to average like 24, 25 to truly be, considered among the very, very best in the NBA or whatever. I think that's gettable just with a better system around him and better finishes around him to offset. But Scotty plus finishers, man, pretty fun, interesting recipe. And it seems like the Raptors are working towards having that, especially once IQ gets back. We're going to come back on the other side, Big V, get into RJ Barrett, who did not play during the stretch of this game where the Raptors looked their best. And that has you a little bit intrigued. We're going to get into that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Mint Mobile, a newer sponsor here on the podcast. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere in between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were getting magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. What Mint Mobile says is $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. They mean it. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along so you can keep all those existing contacts as well. There's nothing worse than having to add new contacts. Mint Mobile makes it so you don't have to do that. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower than 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Slower above 40 gigabytes on an unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Back at it here with Big V, Vivek Jacob from Raptors in 7, his Substack newsletter, and Sportsnet, where he does general NBA coverage. Wonderfully, I might add. Let's get to your big takeaway from this game, Big V. You got some thoughts on RJ Barrett, who played just 27 minutes in this game, had some foul trouble. There was maybe some game flow stuff at the end where just like there were no stoppages as he was waiting at the table to come back in. But you're a little intrigued by the fact that the Raptors' best run of play in this game came without RJ Barrett on the floor. I will give you the floor to wax poetic on this anomaly, occurrence, or perhaps thing we're going to see more of in the future.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just watching the two games in combination, the Thunder game and the Dallas game. You look at the Thunder game, he was inefficient with that one, 5 for 16. I thought he was targeted quite a bit. And I think that is the type of team that would target him because of the weapons that they have. And then I look at the Mavs game, and once again, I wouldn't quite call it targeted. When you look back at the fouls, that it wasn't, we're like specifically hunting this guy, but I did think he did struggle on the defensive end, and I think that's where, when you're not looked at as a good defender, it felt like very much anytime that Luka was matched up against him, it was like, oh yeah, I am absolutely gonna cook, And I didn't think RJ actually played particularly bad defense, but I think there's almost that added confidence of like, this guy can't guard me. And
Right.
I think that shows at times. And in some ways, I felt like the foul trouble kind of benefited the team. And you had, Jacoby coming in and playing really good defense. Davion played some really good defense. Mobo was obviously awesome. Ochai late had a couple of good moments. So I just think the way you needed defense in this game, that kind of worked out for the Raptors. And there were maybe a slight hint of, when DeMar would head to the bench sometimes, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, look at this comeback over here.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're gonna have to see it a lot more often to really make that parallel.
No, for sure. Look, I think it's weird talking about RJ, right? Because, like, objectively, what he's done since becoming a Raptor has been excellent. He has become such a more dynamic, impactful player who has eradicated a lot of the bad sort of fat from his game. It's very streamlined and it's very good. But there are still these little things with RJ that just, and in some cases, big things like the defense, where it's a tough obstacle to get over when you're thinking about the long-term planning of the team. And that's not to say he can't figure some things out. I think the steps he made when Scottie was out, when it comes to just like being like a pick and roll operator, those are really encouraging signs. And that helps you with a whole lot of stuff, throughout sort of navigating the course of a season. But I also think we're seeing the limitations of RJ, even in a number 2 role, right? Like, offensively, it's been okay the last little bit. It's not, and there have been some really nice games where he's popped off, but I think in general, especially when you're asking him to run with the bench and asking him to sort of guide the second unit, it's not been very good this season. With RJ on the floor and neither of Scottie Barnes or Jakob Poeltl on the floor, Raptors have a -12 net rating, which like isn't surprising. Those are the two sort of best play driving players the Raptors have in Scottie and Jak. But if you're looking at RJ and thinking, oh, this guy can like capably run the second units and keep the offense afloat, like the numbers suggest that's probably not actually true. And the defense with him is such a problem that it gets amplified when you're up against a team like the Mavericks, like you said, where like there's nowhere to hide. You have to stick him somewhere. And if he's going to get switched on to guys that are, sort of frothing at the mouth, looking at RJ Barrett as the guy who's guarding him, like, yeah, there are going to be some limitations that get exposed. What have you made of the RJ and bench lineups? I just read off the numbers. That feels like uncharitable almost, because I think he's been better than that. But I mean, the numbers also don't totally lie. Like, it's been a rough go. And some of it is the teammates he's playing with. He's playing a lot of minutes with Davion Mitchell, for example, who's not exactly propping up offense when he's out there, though he is mitigating the defensive issues somewhat. We're talking about him not being in the closing lineup, but I do think a big part of RJ's sort of up and down impact has been the fact that with these second units, it's just kind of not really working right now.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that happens with RJ when he's asked to carry a second unit is you take him out of his best role.
Yep.
Right. And you want him to be receiving the ball on the run, right, and on the move. And so when you take away maybe that transition play finishing element, when you take away those half court sets where he's coming off the curl, and he's the one having to initiate over and over again, I think that's where it can bog down the offense. And then especially when he's initiating with the not optimal offensive options beside him. I think, to your point about what those secondary units look like, I would be curious to see what the splits look like when he's on the court with Gradey Dick, at least, as opposed to
Well, let me
not.
fire up our pals over at Clean the Glass and tell you that while you talk.
And so I think that's probably the biggest thing that changes. It's the shift in role and him being in a situation where he shouldn't be initiating the offense all the time. Ideally, you want someone like you would like the backup point guard to be someone who can actually run the offense. But the Raptors have a backup point guard who excels at defense. Yep. And so that's part of the problem.
Just quickly, you might have seen the face I made when
Yes.
I said that.
So it's not good.
Only 77 possessions, which is maybe a sign that RJ should be playing more with Gradey Dick in these second units just to get more of a sample, because in theory it should help. But so far, in those 77 possessions, minus 33.5 differential. It's 0th percentile, 96.1 offense, 0th percentile, and 129.6 defense, 0th percentile. So yeah, that theory has been busted.
Yeah. So I think, what those lineups would look like would be interesting, because again, we're mentioning that there's no Scottie, there's no Yak, right?
Yeah.
And so defensively, obviously, that would be a big loss. And so again, that comes down to the backup positions, maybe not having the right pieces in place. But yeah, I think the fundamental problem would be that RJ as a play initiator is not the optimal role for him.
Yeah, like I think there was this sort of impulse when RJ had that really hot stretch at the start of the season to be like, oh, look at this, level him up now. And to me, that just like ran counter to everything that made RJ really good last year. He got better when they simplified the role, when they trimmed the fat. And yes, there were a couple of nice games there against Denver. Obviously, the Hornets game, he went nuts. The Kings game, it was basically 1 week. There were 3 or 4 games where RJ Barrett looked like he had made this sort of star turn as an on-ball creator, but it was pretty short-lived. And I think we have seen the limitations of that grow. And I mean, I don't think anyone is going to benefit more. I mean, Scottie Barnes might, but I don't think anyone's going to benefit more from Immanuel Quickley's return than RJ Barrett, because he's just going to get to go back to being the third option on offense. And that's a great place to be. As that third option, he's probably going to have nights where he leads the team in scoring just because he's so efficient in that third option role that the looks he gets, he was captain 9 of 13 last season for a reason. He just gets put in these positions to succeed that he's not really being put in right now. And I am really fascinated to see sort of how it all comes together on the defensive end, especially in close games. When you have Quickley, RJ, and Scottie all together, how do they fill in those lineups? Does Ochai Agbaji close over Gradey Dick, or is the offense of Gradey Dick too important? And I think the next guy that you look at as far as getting late game benchings probably is RJ Barrett. I don't think Quickley's getting benched late in games. Pirtle's not most of the time unless they're up against a specific matchup. Scottie's certainly not. And so if you're not going to bench Gradey and you want some defense in there, all of a sudden RJ becomes the guy. We'll probably get a better sort of view on that once obviously the team is healthy and we get to see these closing lineups actually play. And like I said, I don't think him not playing down the stretch in the game on Saturday was all that tied to him being like intentionally benched by Darko. Again, it was foul trouble and a run of play where there were no stoppages as they were trying to get him in. But it's something to watch for sure. It's like a prelude to our which is coming up in the next segment here, Big V. With that, we will put a pin in this RJ conversation, come back on the other side with the good, the bad, and the things we like, things we didn't like, things that have us a little bit intrigued. And I'm going to introduce all of you to a brand new game. Well, it's not brand new. It's like one of the oldest games there is, but it's got a brand new fun twist. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sports book in North America, which you can go and play around with right now. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. It's that simple. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started again with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. It's not just the NFL, of course. You can go peruse all kinds of different sports. Maybe you want to put some futures money down on the New York Mets winning the World Series now after they got Juan Soto, or you want to put some money down on the Jays winning the AL East now that Juan Soto is not in the AL East. We can be hopeful, right? Go check out our friends over at FanDuel right now. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and, of course, the Locked On Podcast Network. Wrapping it up here with our pal, Big V, Vivek Jacob from Raptors in 7 and Sportsnet with the good, the bad, and the way we recap every Toronto Raptors basketball game on this here podcast. Thing we liked, thing we didn't like, thing that's got us a little bit intrigued from the latest Toronto Raptors basketball game. I will start with my good Big V. Kelly Olynyk's back. This is lovely. This is great. It's so nice to see Kelly back on the floor. He goes 3 of 3 from downtown, scores 13 points on 3 field goal attempts, got to the line 4 times, doing the Kelly Olynyk thing, just kind of breathing offensive juice into the second unit. And all of a sudden, Chris Boucher's out of the rotation. I talked about how I was kind of anxious to see that happen on last Friday's podcast, just kind of over the Chris Boucher thing. Kelly Olynyk, a real breath of fresh air when it comes to just sort of stability in that Chris Boucher role. And I'm really keen on, I mentioned it earlier, the Olynyk, Barnes, Mobo trio. That feels like something you can run with. There's complementary skills there. The passing between those 3 guys is off the charts, crazy fun. Yeah, really nice to have Kelly Olynyk back. He's my good. What you got for your good?
My good is just having rookies who have come in and had legitimately positive impact. You don't expect that from rookies. And I think especially from that Dallas game, to see the way Mobo and Walter impacted in a positive way is super encouraging. Like, I think my favorite play, at least defensive play, was the second quarter where Walter's pressing up on Kyrie, defending him full court, hangs with him the whole way. Kyrie's like, all right, I'm just going to pass it off to Luka. And then Luka on the drive, Jacoby gets in there as the help defender and pokes the ball away. And they were able to get out. And I thought, like, that's the type of defensive impact that you just don't often see from a rookie. And I thought that was special. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Mobo because he's been in there from the start of the season. But I think,
of course, he's my precious boy.
Our precious boy. But yeah, I think Mobo, again, like his ability, like he's, matched up with Lively 1 second, then he's up against Doncic, then he's up against Kyrie. Like you've got this player that you can really put into different situations. And I think that's where his combination, I know you mentioned the trio of like Scottie, Mobo, and Kelly, but I think Mobo and Kelly themselves like complement each other so well.
Totally. Yeah.
And yeah, having that outside threat next to Mobo, and then Mobo also, being able to be the small 5 defensively, I think that helps each other so much.
Yeah, really excited to see that sort of partnership get some time to blossom because it does, like, just skill set wise, it's like a perfect jigsaw puzzle fit. It's very exciting. Jacoby Walter, by the way, most impactful player to ever have a 38% true shooting. Got to start hitting some shots. There's no doubt about that. He's shooting 15% from 3 and 33% from the field. But some of those middies, the secret life of Walter's midi, that does the nice thing to watch on Saturday night. Everyone's favorite Saturday night movie, The Secret Life of Walter's midi. Let's get into the bad. My bad, missing bunnies, man. This was such it's a make or miss league Doug game. Like all time make or miss league Doug game, at least for the first half. For those who don't remember that reference, go search up any postseason press conference from Dwayne Casey during the Cleveland Cavaliers era. But it's one for the old heads, but it just did not feel like a game where the Raptors played especially poorly. I feel like their offensive process was good, but just the shot-making talent on Dallas, I mean, all the way down to that Luka Doncic, like 45-foot floater heave thing that went in at the half. Like, it was just really hard to contend with the shot-making, and it was made harder by the fact that the Raptors just missed a lot of the easy looks they created. 48% at the rim in this game. That's really bad for a team that lives at the rim, that likes to do a lot of their scoring there. You're missing bunnies around the rim like that, you're going to have a hard time keeping pace with a team with the shot-making talent of the Dallas Mavericks. And yeah, I mean, credit to them making the comeback in the second half, hitting more bunnies. But yeah, first half in particular, just like a lot of points left on the table, missing shots that they typically would hit. What you got for your bad?
For my bad, I have the transition defense. I thought there were several plays where it was inexcusable how quickly the Mavs could score. And in particular, there was one play where Grady hit a three, and
Mm-hmm.
within 3 seconds, PJ Washington was dunking the ball.
Yeah,
And I was like, that cannot happen.
no.
And it happened multiple times. It was clearly something the Mavs identified.
Mm-hmm.
And there were multiple times where they had hit ahead passes to push the pace. And yeah, they end up outscoring the Raptors in fast break points 14-8, which I know 14 doesn't seem like a lot, but I think that's probably when you look at the players on the team, like you would expect Luka and Kyrie to, absolutely outmatch you in the half court.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't look at the Mavs and think, oh yeah, they're gonna kill us in transition.
Yep.
And at least a Raptors team. And so I think that was probably what I'll go with. My bad for this one.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. If it happens once or twice where they sprint off a make and score, okay, fine. They sprung the surprise on you. If they fool you a half dozen times, feels like that you got to look in the mirror on that one a little bit, which I'm sure Darko Rajakovic was just like fuming, steam coming out of his ears during some of those situations. Let's get to the let's go to your first because I have some fun stuff I want to close things out with. I did some work in making extra graphics for my so I'll give you the floor here to take us away.
Okay, so for my I've just got Gradey Dick figuring out that, like, hey, it doesn't matter that Scottie's on the floor, it doesn't matter that RJ's on the floor. If I gotta look, I'm taking it. And
Yep.
that's like a graduation in role, in confidence, in understanding. And I think he puts up 14 threes in this one, and it's like, hey, the team needs you to take them. So I think I want to see that continue to progress, because he is that dynamic within the offense, and he knows that Scottie and RJ will find him, and so I do think that's something that I want to see continue to trend that way. Darko has talked about he's not happy with Scottie and wanting even more threes from him. Yeah, Grady, go ahead and get him up.
14 threes, music to my ears with Gradey Dick, man. And
That's
the
season high.
Yeah, 100%. Like the gunner spirit is so alive within him. Just like, oh, miss one, next one's going in. Oh, miss one, next one's going in. Oh, miss six, next one's going in. It's great. It's like me at pickup, except the next one never is going in. Let's get to my which is just an open question. Are we going to get a full Mobo bingo by the end of the season? And by Mobo bingo, I mean, is he going to have a ridiculous defensive play against every superstar in the NBA? I've made a bit of a card here for those watching. If you have, I'll post it some way on socials if you're listening to the podcast so you see it. But I've made a bingo card of all the best players in the NBA with Jonathan Mobo's X-wing fighter shape in one of the many defensive poses he takes as an NBA player. Over the players he's made a ridiculous stop against, I've got Shea from when he totally picked his pocket in that game on Thursday. I've got Anthony Edwards from the multiple air balls he's forced Ant into this season. I've got Kyrie Irving from when he blocked a heat check Kyrie Irving 3 in the middle of an absolutely on fuego stretch from Kyrie Irving. Pretty ridiculous. Sucks that it ended in the hands of Daniel Gafford for a bucket, but we don't remember that part. Same as we don't remember what happened after he blocked the hell out of Tyrese Maxey on a 3. It's been awesome. 2 guys on this board are going to be on deck tonight, and Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. Hopefully we can see Jonathan Mobo add to his bingo card here. Yeah, Mobo bingo. It's a thing. He's just out for all of the heads of all of the best players in the NBA, and he's a rookie. It's ridiculous, Big V.
He is amazing. And yeah, I think when you see these plays, we've seen we've even seen him have good possessions against Tatum and Brown, and I think that's another showcase of just his switchability, his versatility, and when we talk about his ability to stay on the floor, as we're seeing some of these threes go down, It becomes all the more enticing. You want to see him finish a bit better around the bucket. You made the point earlier about missing some chippies. Mobo, you would like to think in time, those shots around the bucket will be chippies for him, which they're not right now.
They are not, unless he's dunking it. By the way, catching a lob from Jakob Poeltl works for me, man. Doing a whole lot of work for me. That's a good way to spend a Saturday night watching television, baby. So we'll keep tabs on MoBingo throughout the season. Hopefully we can add a couple more bodies to the count by the end of tonight against the Knicks. I was thinking about putting him on Luka's square as well, but he had a couple nice possessions on Luka. I don't think there was anything that's going to stand out and kind of be, all-time great, but there were a couple possessions where he totally slid his feet and kept in front of Luka and forced Luka to make absurd passes to Kyrie to bail out possessions because Jonathan Mobo is everything, everywhere, all at once. We're going to leave it there. Big V, anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Usual stuff. Check out Raptors in 7. Check out my regular coverage at Sportsnet, and you can follow me on the socials at Vivek Jacob.
Should I call it Jonathan MoBingo? Is that maybe better? It's not 5 letters, but it's fine. It's MoBingo now. We will leave it there with that really fine piece of wordplay. You can find me at woodleyshawn.bsky.social. You can go to the Discord link in the description. You can subscribe to the newsletter. It's free. It's daily. You get it every single day. I'll have some words on Scottie Barnes, kind of building upon today's first segment in today's newsletter. And we'll have something tomorrow breaking down Raptors Knicks as well. Thanks so much for hanging. Have a good one, everybody. Enjoy the game tonight. Bye-bye. Damn it. I hit the ceiling.